Hi, and welcome to the Be Courageous Summit. My name is Tracy Tadero. I'm a self-love mentor and life coach, and my intention for the summit is to provide love and support for all of our viewers. And today we have a special guest who is going to be sharing some fantastic information. Kate Houston, she is a dating and relationship coach. Kate believes you absolutely can create the deeply loving relationship you've always dreamed of. She believes that the key ingredients to do that she and her clients have realized, is to have courageous conversations first with oneself and then with one's partner to build a foundation of intimacy and freedom for a lifetime of love. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. So much. I love this. Yes, there's so much to creating freedom and intimacy. And I think sometimes we have a lot of fear around that. So I love that the courageous conversations and courageousness of your whole show is about how we step forward, bring our authenticity in, and speak our truth, right?
And I think this is so exciting because it's just such a different dynamic that people aren't thinking about during this time, but it's so important because I think as we're in this, place of being in lockdown or close lockdown isolation, we are in closer connection with the people that we're in a relationship with or wanting to be in a relationship with. And so this is such a powerful part. And thank you for being a part of this show, because I think being courageous in your relationship is something that there's people out there that need to hear. So thank you for joining us. And I will start off with talking about, I guess, during this time of stress, a lot of people are a little more on edge and a little more reactive, right? And especially with the people that we're closest to. I know my kids get a little side of that, my best side. Let's just say my best side. But explain what that means. Responding with intention through courage.
Yes. So many times we react in impulse instead of responding with intention, and it's mindfulness and it's slowing down. And I think this is something that you've mentioned too in sort of your bigger vision here, is that there are thoughts that lead emotions. There's always a thought and a belief before an emotion. Even when we've had trauma, the thought is fear that triggers the cascade physical response of fight or flight and the lizard brain to want to protect you. Like, it can be that visceral. And the thoughts are there in such a microsecond to lead the feelings that we often think, oh, the feelings are running the show. But it's really an unconscious belief, agreement, contract we made. Maybe it's a coping mechanism from childhood that's driving the bus in adulthood and not giving us what we want. And when we get courageous to go deep and say, like, what is that? If we're courageous to say, well, what is really going on? What is that belief? What if I look underneath? It could be that you uncover the belief of, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, something else you told yourself when you were younger to help you manage and make sense of something in your world that was before we had this wise adult developed wisdom and spirit. And when we get to those root causes, we can start to unpack it. We can start to release it. And then we can replace it with truths that we actually believe, the values we actually believe, and the intentions that are in response, like knowing that's not true anymore, and that we have other truths and other experiences in our lives to replace that. That's the more healthy, valued belief that can lead our lives, right?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I love how your metaphor of the bus, because that I was trying kind of chimed in like that. But the bus sometimes goes very crazy, right? And all over, we can't control it. So can you share a time in your life where you had experienced some sort of trigger impulse in one of your relationships that may have where you took that?
Yes, absolutely. So I was in a marriage that actually was with somebody who had a lot of wounds that were not healed yet, and I didn't know that. And they were deeply rooted in shame and guilt from a traumatic and abusive childhood that were not unraveled. And because of that, it created strife in our relationship, because then I didn't know, like, I was walking on eggshells. I had to be kind of perfect, or I was then the replication of the dynamic of that caregiver. And I didn't know that, like, if I made a mistake, then it was all or nothing and no trust was there. There was no means for being human and making mistakes and making amends. It was suddenly, I don't trust you anymore. And I'd never been in that kind of dynamic. And I didn't know at the time that my own kind of like, I started like, he would pull away and I would lean in and go, well, what's going on? How can I help? And he would be like, oh, and like, and it just was this dynamic that caused strife. And that's when I really discovered that he was really acting on impulse. Again, for him, it was the amygdala, it was the lizard brain, it was the fear, it was the trauma. And for me, it was wanting to be connecting and wanting not to be distant. And so I didn't know the best way to interact with him, did my best at the time. It didn't turn into the best end result. We did break up. But and I don't know if we could have repaired. Like, I don't know even what I know now, but I know I could have handled myself and some things a little differently to see. And that's the best I can do, because all we have control of is ourselves, right? And many people, we may have grown up with very different stories around that, where we did try to control or wanted to manage other things or wanted to help or take care of other people's feelings. And so when we step out of that and get courageous by turning inward, we can have a better understanding of that. So what I discovered was that I had a love impulse that was a little anxious, and he had a love impulse that was anxious and also wanting to repulse. And when I created this system, it was really like, oh, here's the thing. I want to respond with intention and not react with impulse. So the reaction with impulse is the trigger, is the feeling of wanting to yell or run away or whatever it may be. And instead of stepping back and saying, is this something that really has to do with me? Do I really need to respond this way? Am I really responsible for these things? And the interesting thing about love impulses is that everybody has one. We all have one that was formulated when we were kids growing up based on the experiences we had in childhood with our caregivers, our parents, foster parents, grandparents, whatever. And when we have somebody, like as a child, you inherently turn to the person that's your caregiver, your parents. And when you are in need, you turn to them for soothing. Mm-hmm. And depending on the family you had, you may not have received that. You may have received a brushing away. You may have received just, subtle being ignored. Or you may have had a parent who was highly reactionary, like freaked out and yelled at you when you wanted anything. Or, any number of things. Or you had a parent that wasn't there, and it doesn't mean it was traumatic. It could be they worked a lot and you missed that. So you decided to rely on yourself a lot more, and you learned not to trust others because they were inconsistent, or you didn't know what to do at all. So you just froze, like, I want them, but I don't want them, especially in abusive situations. It's like you want to turn to the parent, but then they're also the person, the face of fear, right? So those things all can drive into your future, and you learn coping mechanisms like, I just need to trust me. I'm okay, and everybody else I can't trust. Or I don't trust myself, but I'll trust others. So I lean on others more than I should. Need and I cling, right? Or I don't know what to do either way. So I'm going to be in, out, push, pull. I'm kind of in, I'm kind of out. I'm never quite certain. And what I find about the love impulse is it's kind of like music, in that a composition of music has pieces that work well together to create beautiful harmonies. And then there can be other mixes that create noise. And that's kind of the same thing with love impulses. There are matches that are well, like work together well. And then there's matches that are just boom, like the roller coaster relationship, the hot, cold, the high, low, those things that we may have had in relationship. And there are ways to soothe ourselves. And that's where the courageous conversations come in, is we have to get real with our own understanding of why we have our reactions, what the trigger is, and where we can take control of what I'm in charge of. Like, if I have a need to be assured more often, well, where can I give myself assurances, not require the responsibility of my emotional care on my partner completely? They're a support. They don't have to be in charge of it, right? And that's that walk. And when you learn that through the work that I do, it's enlightening and empowering, right? You get to really wake up and have this, oh my gosh, I can be triggered, but I don't have to make the meaning about it. I get to see what the reality is. I can step into an authenticity and intimate conversation of, wow, what you just said to me made me want to run away or scream at you. But I don't want to do that, because it's actually about, and maybe you've had enough time to reflect, this family relationship, this past relationship I had that was just like this, or he used to say this to me. And the intimacy is in sharing our messiness, right?
Yeah, for
And when
sure.
we put up walls to protect, even if we're in relationship with someone, and our pattern is then to create protections, then we're two walls and nobody's communicating. And there's an opportunity to go, look, I like, wow, I don't want to be this anymore. How can we connect and not be adversaries in relationship? Because that's what I had been in. Like we ended up being adversaries, and I didn't have the language at that time to break into the cracks where he would have maybe let that in.
Yeah, and I think paying attention and really identifying some of those old wounds in relationships, like childhood wounds or wounds from past relationships, is so empowering. Like you're saying, excuse me, to be able to identify, like it's not necessarily that person. That's an old
Yeah.
wound. So can you explain to our viewers that, what some of the, being in this situation where we're kind of confined in our homes and not being able to get out like we normally would, what are some of the things that people might be experiencing in a relationship um, now that they're spending a lot more time together that might be activating some of these old wounds?
Well, I think I've heard a lot of women say things like, I'm more irritated than ever. He's not picking up his clothes. Those are dishes in the sink, all like something about home and the tidiness of home and how there's an expectation from one versus another. It's more agitated than ever. And there may be meaning making of they don't value me or they're expecting me to do it. And when you can have a real conversation with your partner and say, this really bothers me. And if they can say, I'm just absent-minded. I'm not doing it to offend you.
Mm.
And if they say, I'm going to try, but trying doesn't mean they're going to be 100%. It means the conversation be, well, they're going to give their part. And then if I still see socks on the floor, I get to say, this is just not a priority for them. It doesn't mean it's an attack on my value. And like the story might be for women is like, that I'm not valued to be, for what I care about to be cared about. Well, maybe they just don't care about it. It's not you, it's that. They may be thinking of these bigger things of like going to work or, being safe, or if they're essential workers, like how they're, there's all these energies that are really taking up the space of our hearts and our minds, especially if it's a man. They're going to be like, how can I be a provider? They really want to make you happy. They want to be your hero. And if we attack them as a person, then they don't see how they can be a hero. So allowing them space is really key. And saying, thank you. I noticed that you're providing a lot of attention to making sure the car works or whatever it might be. Like, who knows what it is. And it might not be your priority, but when they are doing something that is trying to help the whole, recognizing and acknowledging that can go miles. Like taking out the trash. That can be another one, right? Instead of saying, why aren't you taking out the trash? That attacks them for not doing something, rather than saying, when you take out the trash for me, it provides me with such relief that I can just put my feet up and relax and not do one more thing. Then
Mm.
it's telling them how they can make you feel good by
Mm.
doing something really simple, rather than, henpecking about, why aren't you doing
Okay,
this?
right.
So it's like, and it's, we think as women, oh, isn't that the same thing? No, we just think because we're relational and we say things 16 different ways and our girlfriends hear the same thing. Men don't think that way. They don't hear it the way. So we need to be aware of how we're speaking, and we can acknowledge like that they're caring for us. And like, that feels really good when that made me feel really relieved. That made me feel really taken care of. That made me feel like a princess. I mean, like you could literally say things like that. And like women, maybe when we're out of a relationship, we forget those magical feelings in the first moments of dating, but we can bring that back by noticing, acknowledging, and appreciating the little things as if it were like heroic daily events, right?
I like the way you said that.
Yeah. And then he'll want to do things that make you feel good. It's a natural, like I think a natural flow that we forget. And so, and it's letting go of some of those things. Like it isn't about the socks on the floor. And maybe it's like, okay, if I'm really triggered by that, what story am I making up about that I'm believing about me, about my worth and my value? Because women usually, when we're struggling, it's what's wrong with me. And men, when they're struggling with problems, it's what's wrong, how can I solve it? They don't internalize like women do. And so that's where we kind of get in conflict too. And we don't even know that that's the driving story going on. And that's the root cause. It's like, oh, I have to be of service, or I learned to grow up that I have to do things and be a helper in order to be valued. Maybe you were a kid and like I was a helper all the time, and I might have made that story up that I need to be doing things and be of service and to help. So like, here's another thing. Like if a man is trying to do something and he's struggling with it, I know lots of women who will jump in and say, well, and they want to be doing something to help. And the man's like, stop. And then there's this conflict. But allowing men to struggle and put in effort, they don't mind. And allowing them to do something for you, even if it takes longer than you think, or you have a other way, let them just help you. Right?
Yeah, a new way of looking at things. That's
Yeah.
perfect. I think that's good for people to hear that.
I think it's good. And I think that maybe there are men listening going, oh God, that's totally it. Or I really want to be that way. Because I think when we talk as women to men from a place of, it feels like it's attacking their personality, then they're feeling like it's a no-win. Me being me is not good enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than saying this type of thing would help me. So, and men can help by like just, trying to work through these things. Like, we don't always say things in the best way. Right?
I think asking questions, right, is so
Yeah.
crucial, or sharing how we feel. Like, oh, when you said that like that, here's how I felt. Because we're not mind readers in
Yeah.
dealing with the partner. When you're saying, hey, I get so frustrated with your socks on the floor, like creative or courageous conversations, like you said, that's just so important, right? The
Yeah.
communication.
What's the meaning you're putting behind that? Because that's the trigger. The socks on the floor really is not really actually the socks, right? It's some
Right. It is not those.
like, what does that mean? Or he doesn't care. It's like, oh my gosh, like, or when I ask for what I want, I don't get it. Like, there's a lot of women who may stuff down what they want and don't ask for what they want, because somewhere along the line they did and they got hurt and didn't get what they wanted. So that's where, okay, the sink stuff in the sink, I'm asking for help, that's not happening, then it triggers that old story rather than, and then having the conversation of like, this is where you get internal, like you have the conversation with yourself. What does this mean? And then if you can sit there with a man and say, no, first of all, you did nothing wrong, which is true. This is my crap. This is my story about why I hate this. But can I share with you, like, I think these things sitting there and constantly having dishes in the sink, and I've asked you, it's causing me to feel a story that's not true, but it's like bringing this up for me that I don't feel valued.
Hmm.
And I know that's not what you're saying, but that's because of this other thing. Maybe you share that other thing, the thing in growing up with 8 kids in your family or whatever the thing is. And I know it's not you, but when you help, it helps me heal that story. Now there's a different thing. It's like me just putting dishes in the dishwasher helps you emotionally feel better about you. That's a different story than, why don't you do this? You're pissing me off.
All
So
right.
it's getting vulnerable and knowing enough about your story and your triggers and your feelings and those thoughts that run the bus of the feelings, and saying to him, I might say this messy. I don't know if I'm going to say this skillfully, but can I share something with you? And that's letting him into a moment of you trying, and they're going to be more open to making space for not taking something you say maybe not the best way personally too, because you're like, I'm now sitting on the edge of these emotions and don't know what I'm saying well or not.
Yeah,
Because
well,
we want
learning.
to tie things up with a bow, right? And like,
Right.
am I presenting this to you perfectly? Well, no, I don't think anybody in relationship actually wants that. It's just a story we create out of perfectionism. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I don't know if anybody else is. But sharing those feelings, that's intimacy, and being okay, even if it isn't resolved, like there's a disagreement in feelings.
Mm.
It's sitting in an acknowledgement that we see each other's feelings, and even if we don't agree, it's okay. And let's just sit there together, and empathy and compassion for each other.
Yeah,
And love.
it sounds so simple, right? So how can you share this into this other arena of dating, being courageous?
Yeah.
So for those who are single out there that are maybe considering, in this virtual dating world right now,
Yeah.
Anything you can share with them, please?
Well, I think everybody has to approach it from you have to come from the approach that people are well-meaning, that their intentions are good, that they do want connection, that we all have these kind of limiting beliefs driving our bus sometimes, to where we might create conclusions over curiosity. Like if somebody messages just hey, and if somebody gets upset about that, like I think guys are like, I don't even know what to say to that. And girls are like, why isn't he trying harder? Like there's all these stories we're making up immediately. And like I say to women, do you know how many messages guys send out and never get a response? Like they are out there sending message after message like, hi, oh, I liked you. Or, I mean, like they don't have the time to be meaningfully messaging all the people, because that's like, women want the men to take the initiative, but then we get upset if they aren't being deep right away. Well, if they send 10 or 15 messages a day because they're actually committed to finding somebody, or a week, whatever it might be, like we women like get to inspire that and help and like lead with greater, hi, it's great to see you, and ask a question that's open and start to help dialogue, you know what I mean? And don't judge. And I think some women they think, well, they should be more sophisticated. Well, I'm like, the more sophisticated messages probably come from the Rico Suaves you don't really want to know. Like a guy who's a little like sweet and nerdy and has a big heart and will love you to death may not have perfect communication skills. So give somebody a break, right? It's like smiling across the room. Allow, right? And receive and be aware and just have a sweet back and forth, It's okay. And I think a lot of guys, for the women out there, a lot of guys, and maybe the guys can relate to this, with so much going on culturally and not wanting to offend women, there are some women who are they're worried about complimenting a woman on their looks because they get the message in society right now that is too sexual and sexualizing women. Well, I want a guy to compliment me. I want him to like my personality and find me attractive. And, every woman's a little different and defensive on that. So they're like, I don't even know what I should say. So then they're waiting. And then some woman has an expectation that, how would they know that? How do they know how you feel? We have to open up the door to flirting a little so that men feel it's okay. I feel especially like I work with women that are over 40. If men have been in dating and had their own relationship difficulties, they're a little, careful, which I hope they are, because we're all a little careful, right? But we have to give them a crack in the door that they have a chance with us by maybe flirting back or saying something or winking, and flirting is not a contract, a marriage proposal. Like it's not the be all end all. It's just being in the moment of like, I like what you said right now. I like the flirt we're having right now, and be in the playfulness of it. And I think men would appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just, I think like you were saying, it's just being open and don't create those stories, right? And pay attention to the impulse reaction that we go to if there's not a long drawn out message, or I think that's great for people to understand, because we do instantly, in every area of our life, we're always making up stories based on our own experiences and paradigms, right?
And usually that's because we've had uncertainty in our world in some way, some insecurities, whether growing up or otherwise, and we create this process of trying to create certainty and conclusions outside of us to make us feel safe. But that doesn't work when all we can do is make ourselves certain about our own values, our own expectations, our own feelings, and find the best way to communicate it as skillfully as we can at the moment, and learn all the time and own it when we go, oh, dude, that came out kind of difficult, or I don't think I said that right. Maybe I meant this, or, can I come back to you on that? Or I don't even know how I feel, but I'm feeling something and I need to step away. Like you can even do that rather than yell at someone, right?
Yeah.
So I think in dating is really interesting because we want to allow for curiosity and just exploring and learning and just being present with each other, right? And remember that anytime we're triggered, it's about us. It's never about the other person. When we can learn and really follow that guideline, it's my favorite. And for men and women, this is a rule. Men, if you can do this, you're going to be a god to the women. Women, if you follow this rule, you will feel sanity when you felt insanity. Here's the thing. I'm going to talk to the men for a minute. Please, when you ask a woman for a date, a phone date, a video date, a real date, make a place and a time, because that means it's set. There's a location, there's a time to meet. If you're just talking in general on a day and no date, no place, that's not really a date. And it leaves women feeling lingering, hanging, unsure. And they want to feel sure. They want to feel safe and secure with you. So if you say, I would like to meet you, are you available Saturday or Sunday? Anytime between 3 and 5, either of those days, and a woman can pick, and you set it, and then it's a date, right? Women, you do not have a date unless you have a place and a time. It saves your sanity. So if you have somebody saying, well, let's meet, after work on Friday at 5:30, and it's 2 days later and you're still wondering, just assume it's not a date until you have a place and time, and you'll be sane. And if he didn't figure that out, or maybe he forgot or whatever, and he comes back later and says, and you missed, you don't have to get worked up. You don't have to blame him. Maybe he just doesn't have, he didn't think about it. He didn't finish, whatever, life happens, right? And if he comes back and says, oh, I thought we were meeting and you had other plans. You say, well, we didn't have a place. So I've gotten a lot of anxiety when I don't know a place and time. So I just assume we don't have a date until those things are set. That tells a man how to treat you, and men, then you know how to treat a woman. It's a very simple thing. And the other thing is, if you don't want to see a woman again, don't say, can I see you again at the end of a date? Because you're filling space and you don't know what to say. It's a hard thing to be honest. And it could be well, I had a good time, but I'm not feeling a spark. Either one can say that. And it's hard, but it's honest. And it only feels hard because we don't want to hurt people's feelings, but it sets us up for uncertainty and weird anxieties, both sides. Right? So if you can simply say, I had a great time, but I've had women be well, they said they were going to call me and then they didn't ever call me. That's filler maybe. Right? So men, have that courage to be honest and not fill the space with something you don't mean, to be kind. The kindest thing to do is to be honest, even if somebody reacts because they don't know how to deal with direct honesty. But if we start building direct honesty with kindness and receptive ways to, you wouldn't say, well, I don't want to see you again. You don't want to be mean. I just don't, I'm not feeling the spark. I'm having fun with you. You're a really great person. Or maybe I don't see how we align. I've had clients who've been on dates who listen, they're amazing, they're magical, and they want to have a winery and horses in the country, and I'm a city girl. That would never work. But I had a great time with them, and I got to say at the end, I just don't think our lives align. But I love your energy, and I'm excited for you, and I hope you meet someone that's still connected, that's still vulnerable, and it's genuine, right? And it's hard sometimes for us to navigate that. So if you can do those two things, men, if you could literally set the date and time, women will feel they can trust you. They will feel that they have some safety and security, because women want safety and security with their partner. It's a thing. It's a real thing, right? In life and partnership. It's real. And so dating insecurity is causes a lot of insanity for women. So set a place and time if you really mean it. Finish. Make it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that advice that you just put out there, not just for dating, but for men in marriages and that are living together, you can still date your partner. You can still date your wife, and setting those plans too it means a lot,
When we're in a place and time of uncertainty, if we could do little things hey, let's have let me give you a foot massage date tonight at 7. That's certainty in a world of uncertainty right now. Little things.
That's nice.
Or I'm going to take the kids tonight from 7 to 8, so you can just do whatever you want. And check, is that a good time for you? Or was there another and work and set a date for whatever's the caring thing that you want to gift your partner, right? That'll ground women in a way to feel that they can then pull from their creative forces, their juices, and they don't have to take care of everything, right? I know a lot of powerhouse women that I work with feel like they have to take care of everything, and it's nice when they don't have to worry about it all, and little things can be taken off their plate, and they don't have to be super moms, super women, right?
Yeah, we want to be able to breathe sometimes too.
We want to have that shoulder to be messy on, and that's the security we need, that the man is grounded enough that I can lean on you and cry and let out and be a mess, and they're the rock, they are the tree, right? They are rooted and solid and can Don't internalize it as a problem, but just listen. And that's the other thing, having those conversations of like, can you just listen? You don't have to problem solve. Women need to say that to men because they want to problem solve all the time, right?
And you know what? Bless their hearts for wanting to do that. They've got brilliant minds to be able to do
And
that.
a man can say, do you want me to listen or problem solve for whatever you're about to share with me? And that's an easy way to allow the woman to say, oh, just listen. And then they're going to be in a different space and all they want is your arms and the shoulder. Versus, I'm going to want you to listen and then maybe give me some suggestions. I don't know yet. I mean, at least you get to know, and then men will listen differently based on what women need. And women, we do all of it all at the same time. So that's why we need to clarify with men. And it helps so much with communication. And frankly, it's surprising that we can communicate at all, because there's so many miscommunications that we need to laugh at and let it be neutral. Like I had a client who was going on a weekend date with somebody, like they'd been 6 months together. They were all excited, and he was frustrated that he couldn't find a place at the coast that had a stove. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. And what he really meant was fireplace, because that's what he called it. And like there was this whole and then they laughed. So then they laughed about it, and it was like, oh, this is where we get to note we can miscommunicate about needs all the time. Like, what does this mean to you? What does this mean to me? And right now, being vulnerable when you're dating about how do you feel about hugging or kissing, or would you like, and to say, I would normally hug you and kiss you right now because I'm really attracted to you, but I'm making a commitment to responsibility and I don't know what to do, and it feels weird, but I wanted to tell you that. That's very vulnerable, but it's beautiful, right? And then a guy gets to go, ooh, she does want that, and she's being responsible and following her values. And a guy who respects you will be okay with that. And a guy who's not wanting that will disappear, and that's fine. Like, it's just not alignment. Like, we got to really let it be about not better, worse, hurting, not hurting. It's values and finding the right match for us, right?
It is. It is. Thank you. Thank you. And in wrapping that up, I'm just love, your final words to our viewers on being courageous in relationships. Any final words or advice?
Well, just take the time to be courageous with yourself. When you're feeling triggered, stop. First thing to do is to do nothing. That's the first change of behavior you can do. Do nothing versus the pattern of what you used to do. And ask yourself, what story am I creating and making up about this? What belief might be triggering this that I get to look at? And just be curious. And even if it happens over and over and you don't have the answer right away, it will unfold. It will come up. It will release, and you'll start getting to work on that. And then you can share that with your partners.
And what big accomplishments. I mean, it feels so good to be able to identify, like, oh my gosh, I responded differently this time. And it turned in, it didn't turn into a big disagreement. It blew over because we're managing our emotions better. Thank you.
And understanding the thoughts behind it is so great. It's so great.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Kate, so much for all your information and wisdom. And I know you have a fabulous gift for our viewers, which they can get at the link at the bottom of this email. But go ahead and explain what that is, please.
So what it is you get to take a quiz for your love impulse type, a little bit more about that, and it'll identify where you might be. And then there's a sheet that is something you can replicate as many times as you want, that is looking at relationship and asking, where might you have been in relationship with others in the past? Because one of the things about the love impulse is you may be highly anxious and clingy in one relationship and more secure and grounded in another. And you're like, well, I don't know what my love impulse is. But based on what the other partner's type is, that's how we react. That's that dance, like I was saying with music. So it gives you a chance to get real about, oh, this is why I was different in this relationship and this one. And it helps you unpack some of that and gives people the opportunity to just dive deeper into those questions to ourselves.
Fabulous. And that's good for people in relationship and single people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's about getting to know ourselves. And you can always ask me questions about it. If you're curious and want to ask more questions about your love impulse type, there's an opportunity to do that too.
Great. Thank you. And then also, I know you have a paid offer that you are making available to the viewers.
Yes, I have a offer that's called the Release to Find Peace. It's a 5-week sort of meditative opportunity where we'll have an hour a week where we will go and do work to release pains and struggles and limiting beliefs, especially right now where that's coming up a lot. It's very much a great self-love, self-care opportunity where people will be able to join me in a group, and we have heart work where you get to journal and write and have transformation and learning along the way that really helps you. And that's going to be available. I think we're going to start that right after your summit, maybe the week or so after your summit ends. So it's going to be right after all of this. So people can hop on and join me for that as well.
So they can sign up for that through your website. Is there a link on your website for that?
I can give you that website for sure. Yeah, I'll have that on there for you, with the link. So maybe that's something you can share with them.
And what's the cost for that?
It's $97 for 5 whole sessions. It's something I just want to make it simple and easy for everybody, and to not give yourself that gift of grounding, self-care, and peace within. That be the eye of the storm where you're calm and grounded, and it doesn't matter what's happening all around you. And it's coming up a lot now. So I'm trying to offer opportunities for people to ground out and find that security and solidness within.
Be unshakable. I love it. That's what it is. Well, thank you so much, Kate. This was wonderful. And I know the viewers appreciate all the information and opening their eyes up to new things that they may not understand, and hopefully, helping them through these times with any relationships in their life. So thank you. And to all our viewers out there, in the meantime, in your relationships, be courageous. And we are signing off with love and light. Bye.